Alright guys, so I'm going to talk about the most annoying part of keeping and breeding mealworms, and that is when you have to separate the beetles from the worms so that you can keep the beetles as breeding stock and then feed out the worms. But I'm going to show you a little trick that might help you out. And so what I did today is I actually sifted all the substrate out of my two bins. So right over here I have a bin of pretty much purely mealworms. And then over here I'll show you how I separated these mealworms and beetles out. But I sifted out the substrate from both of those bins just because it got a little bit humid. I had a little bit of rotten vegetables in there and it got gross, so I decided to completely clean it out. But what I was left with once I sifted out all of the mealworms and beetles in my breeding bin was quite a few mealworms, probably about a pound of mealworms, and mixed in with the breeding beetles. So that was kind of an annoying problem because I wanted to separate out the worms so that I could feed them out, but I wanted to keep the beetles behind and I didn't want to do it manually. So this is just a little trick to show you how you can do it pretty easily. And what you do is you pour the whole mix. So everything in this box was originally in this colander. So you take the whole mix of mealworms and beetles and you put it inside the colander. And then you just place an apple or something in there that they can smell and they want to eat. And that encourages them to go searching for that. So this works best if you withhold food for about 48 hours. But then what will happen is the mealworms will actually be able to let themselves out the bottoms. I don't know if you can see that very well, but they let themselves out the bottom of the colander because they can fit through the holes. But if you've picked the right colander, the hole is too small for the adult beetles to get through. So then what you'll do is you'll just place this bin somewhere with that apple in it, which is encouraging the mealworms to come out. And you wait about 45 minutes. That's how long it took these. It's pretty quick, so keep an eye on it. But within an hour or so, they should have all migrated out of the colander, leaving you behind mostly beetles, okay? And so it's not a perfect thing. Actually, the longer you wait, the more beetles you'll end up with in your mealworms. But it is definitely a lot quicker than doing this manually, which would be kind of a nightmare. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set aside this colander of breeding beetles. And I'm going to dump this bin in with the rest of the mealworms. So now all the mealworms are separated out into their own tub. I'm going to add some fresh substrate to this, and this is what I'm going to use a feed out of. Obviously you can see there are still quite a number of beetles in there, but a lot less than was originally there, and I'm just going to have to hand pick those out. So that's just part of it. And then over here I have my beetles, mostly beetles, and some mealworms, and you put them back in the breeding container. Okay? And so this is mostly beetles and some mealworms. I'm not too worried about it. It's actually not a bad thing if some of those mealworms stay in there and become allow them to pupate, and then we can have some more breeding beetles. But that was just a quick and dirty way to do this. Now I have my breeding colony and I have my feeding bin, which I'll let them grow out to, and I'll be slowly separating out